So this week's theme is around peace. And so peace can get all sorts of different misconceptions. People can think of it in a simplistic way or in a kind of a world peace kind of way, where it's this idealistic notion. But what we're going to be talking about this week is a peace that's much more accessible, a peace that is fairly clear to reach, and a piece that in a lot of ways is a tough piece. Peace is not a simple thing to be able to reach. Peace can be found in moments. Peace can be found in experiences that we have. Peace can be found in our relationships, in the world, and within ourselves. And we capture it when we can in these moments. We try to create it in these moments when we can. So there is some control we have to be able to find peace and create peace. But peace sometimes gets wrapped up into thinking that people will think that it's something that's all or none. There's the peaceful person over there and the unpeaceful people right here or there, that I can't find peace, but all these people can, or it's just for the guru on the top of the mountain to have, or gosh, if I just worked harder in my mindfulness, I would finally find that peace and I would just have it. So we kind of have this all or none thinking or all encompassing thing with peace. And then of course we realize we can't get it in an all or none way, and we can't get it in an all encompassing way. And then we kind of give up, and we kind of have given up on the word, in at least a lot of us have. So in some ways this week is about bringing the word back. And while it might be challenging to find peace, it can also be simple to find peace. And so that's what we're going to be working on. So, the study of peace is not any small thing. There is a whole field called peace psychology. Some people think of it as peace and conflict studies. And it's vast, and it's very, very complex, because the moment you start to delve into peace, you get into the individual differences within all of us, you get into cultural differences, you get into the economics of peace, and it might be easier for some people than others based on their economy. You get into political issues, you get into religious and spiritual issues. It gets so mind-bogglingly complicated. So our job at EdVia has always been one to try to uncomplicate things, to honor the complexities, but to also bring practices from the science for people. And while there really is not a science of these 24 character strengths and peace, that's one of the calls that I'm making for researchers and practitioners to create that science. Still, we have a lot that we can learn from the science and from the concepts from character strengths, how character strengths can inform peace. So we might start with, by the way, and so some of the things that I'm talking about here today and Wednesday especially, I relayed recently in a presentation I gave for the UN, for one of the UN agencies, UNESCO, on bringing character strengths for inner peace and relational peace. So we might start by thinking of what is peace, and we can think of it on a couple different levels, two main levels that peace psychologists and practitioners and researchers tend to outline. One is more of what we think of as negative peace, and by the way, these aren't good and bad. Negative peace and positive peace are not good and bad. So a negative peace is when we are pursuing the absence of violence, or trying to reduce war on the big global scale, or maybe trying to reduce conflict in a relationship, or maybe trying to reduce conflict in yourself, dealing with your own inner turmoil. So those would be examples of negative peace, sort of trying to pursue a freedom from disturbance, if you will. But then we can also speak to what researchers call positive peace. Again, we're not talking about good and bad here. We're talking about two good things, really, in terms of the pursuit. And positive peace is when we're deliberately creating or fostering calm or serenity, or pursuing harmony, pursuing a state of mind that's more one of equanimity and calm. Or we can argue using our character strengths to create more harmony within ourselves, to manage what's going on inside of ourselves. And of course, we can use our character strengths to reduce violence and reduce conflict and so on. So character strengths play a role in positive peace and negative peace. So if we get this practical right away, think about what causes you peace. And I use that word intentionally, causes. So what are the causes of your peace? In other words, what do you do on a mental level, a behavioral action level, to cause peace for you? And again, not a permanent state of peace that nobody achieves, but moments of peace, or 10 minutes of peace, 2 hours of peace. What do you do to cause that? Is it, the obvious of meditation or certain spiritual practices? Or is it certain things you do in your relationships with others that causes peace for you? And that word cause is really deliberate, where you do A and that brings about B. Rather than, I kind of just do a lot of different stuff and I kind of feel a little bit better sometimes, or that. We can get wishy-washy in our mind and it gets all muddled. But really deliberately, I do A, that leads to B, which is a peaceful state for 20 seconds or 20 minutes or an hour. So that's really the challenge here. And I obviously can't answer that for anybody. We all have to think of that for ourselves, and it's going to be different all the time. I could say sometimes when I practice mindfulness meditation, sometimes I feel a sense of inner peace. We do mindfulness not to create a state, but we do it to become more aware of what's going on in our present moment. And so sometimes for me, the result is more peace and calmness and serenity. But sometimes the result is greater agitation, by the way, greater upsetness. And that's because I become more tuned in to struggles going on in me that I maybe hadn't been tuned into. So it brings those to the surface. So sometimes mindfulness for me. Also for me, sometimes when I'm particularly when I'm organizing something with my family, like if I organize an activity for my 3 kids and wife, and we sit down, even something like sitting down to watch a show together can be like herding cats with my family. So if I kind of orchestrate that and we do that and we're all sitting there and I kind of take this perspective of kind of almost looking down and seeing the 5 of us there watching a TV show together, maybe a meaningful one or something like that, then I can feel a sense of peace from that. It's an immediate sense of calmness and serenity for a few minutes, but then there's some lingering sense of peace for, say, an hour or 2 a lot of times. So how do you cause peace for yourself? You could ask the question, when do you feel greater inner peace? Since that's our focus here today, obviously, since Mondays are more about the personal peace, so we're focusing on inner peace today. We'll talk more about relational peace, relationship peace on Wednesday. So then, to look at this from another angle, to help us get more maybe more specific on this cause for us, is there a peaceful strength? And that's kind of interesting to me, at least, is to look at these 24 character strengths and think, is one or more of these more connected to peace in some ways? We know that there's the strengths that correlate in study after study after study with happiness, and there's those same strengths have been studied and found to cause happiness for people. And we know that some strengths are more related to achievement, so there's kind of achievement oriented strengths, and so on, with different things that we might be pursuing in our life. But what about peace? Is there a peaceful strength? So let's go through it. Since we don't know it from a scientific perspective, let's conceptually think about it. So the one that comes strongest to me as a peaceful strength is self-regulation. Because self-regulation is about, as you know, taking control of our attention. It's about finding a sense of calmness a lot of times, a sense of control to manage our impulses. And if our emotions are getting volatile, we can use our self-regulation to take some control. So we're literally, a lot of times when we're using self-regulation, we're literally creating peace. So I think that's a really good candidate. And then I think, well, one researcher was calling out prudence as a peaceful strength. And she was doing that because she's studying bullying behavior, kind of the opposite of peace, creating turmoil for other people and even being violent to other people. And she found any way that she looked at the data or looked at whether you were the victim or whether you're the bully yourself, the strength that helped to buffer the problems. I mean, a lot of them were helpful, but the one in every single way she looked at it that was helpful was prudence. So perhaps there's some protective element to prudence, which then it's about creating peace in some ways. Maybe it's more of a negative piece. Maybe it helps us to reduce aggression, but maybe there's some promotion of harmony as well from prudence. I'm not sure. So far we've just hit on two of the strengths that are least common around the world. So let's go to a third one that's least common around the world, which is humility. Perhaps that is a peaceful strength, because when we're humble, we're down to earth. There's that link with gentleness that we talked about. There's that softness about us, and very peaceful in a lot of ways. I've mentioned Thich Nhat Hanh a lot of times, and in these sessions, and Thich Nhat Hanh is often described as a humble monk, as he walks with each step with peace and as he interacts with people. So there's that down-to-earth sense of peacefulness. I think humility would be a big candidate. And notice all three of these are in the temperance virtue so far. But we could keep going. What about social intelligence or honesty? Could they be a peaceful strengths? Because if you look at peace programs, there's all sorts of peace programs that have been created around the world. And a lot of them deal with having effective communication with people. And if you look at those, it's a lot of times it's about being aware of the needs of others, being aware of the feelings of others, and doing that with a sense of authenticity and a sense of honesty. So being aware of the needs and feelings of others and responding appropriately, that's social intelligence. And then if you're speaking in an honest way with people that's socially appropriate, there's the honesty strength. So perhaps those are peace strengths. Or what about hope? Maybe could hope be a peaceful strength? In one study of Nobel Prize winners, the Nobel Prize winners' speeches, they looked at them across the decades, and they analyzed the content of the Nobel Prize winning speeches. And other than the word peace, the strength or value that came up the most was hope. 92% of speeches by Nobel laureates had hope discussed. So maybe hope is a key peaceful strength. Or what about fairness? In that same study of Nobel Prize winning speeches, the word justice, which is kind of the same thing, justice or fairness, came up 85% of the time in speeches. So perhaps fairness is the peaceful strength. Or, we can't overlook forgiveness, because forgiveness is all about letting go when somebody affronts you or offends you. And if you're really good at letting go, then in a lot of ways, you're good at creating peace in yourself. Because we all know that when we're harboring resentment, when somebody said something to you and you're holding that in and not speaking up for yourself, you're holding it, you're basically creating the opposite of peace in yourself. And we all know, I don't know if all of us know, but a lot of us know that the key thing about forgiveness is when we forgive, it's more about releasing the tension in ourselves than it is about the other person. So forgiveness is more about us. And you could argue it's about creating peace. We could keep going. Kindness, thinking about other people, being helpful and generous, perhaps that's a key part of peace. And how could you not include curiosity? If you start a conversation with a difficult person, somebody you're about to fight with and argue with, and if you start the question rather than blaming them, And rather than proclaiming how you're right, I got to make sure I get my argument in there. I got to say my thing. So many people will say, I got to say my stuff. And instead, start with curious questioning and exploring in a genuine way, trying to learn their perspective in a curious way. You're probably creating more peace between the two of you. You're at least increasing the chances of peace. So perhaps curiosity is part of it. Or perhaps we could look to, wasn't Martin Luther King Jr. a huge exemplar of peace? But his peace wasn't like Thich Nhat Hanh's, where it was super kind of quiet, humble, gentle. It was fiery, a fiery peace. So perhaps peace is then zest and bravery and perseverance, which would probably be Martin Luther King Jr.'s highest character strengths. So kind of an impassioned, motivational sense of peace. So you could see it takes many different forms, and you could each name your own peace idol or your peace role model, and they would probably have some constellation of some of the strengths I've mentioned and maybe some of the others I've not yet mentioned. So the answer might be that perhaps all 24 character strengths matter. And that's why I really see this via classification as a common language of peace. For inner peace within ourselves, but then also for relationship peace. So those are the two areas we're kind of hitting on this week. And we're not even getting to some of the other really complex stuff, like how do you create peace between groups that are having trouble with one another, what we call intergroup peace. Or how do you create peace on a team? One of Ruth Pierce's big interests, which is intra-group peace. So those are two other huge areas. And then there's the area of international peace. How do you do that? So, in the character strengths, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind are part of all these, but they've not been studied. That's why this is a call to researchers. But then if some of you are practitioners doing some of this work, you do nonviolent communication, which is the Rosenberg stuff, or some of the other justice kind of programs, weave in these character strengths and let us know how it goes. So, or anyway, so it's a call to really to all of us. Or for those of us maybe that aren't researchers or practitioners, it's still a call to all of us to work on creating peace in ourselves, using mindfulness and using character strengths. So let that be sort of the precursor to our meditation here today. And what we'll do is what we didn't do in the gentleness meditation, which is walking meditation. So I'm going to get on my wireless headset in a moment and we'll do walking meditation. But I want to just kind of set it up by saying that we're doing walking meditation as a way to practice being peace. Again, we're not being peace permanently, so let that go. But we can be peace, as Thich Nhat Hanh might say, with this step, and then with this step. He has a wonderful book that you should get called Peace is Every Step. So you can be peace in this step as you walk the earth, as you engage in nature, as you take this step metaphorically to talk to your spouse, as you face your own isolation with this next step. So peace is every step. We can become peace, and in the walking meditation can practice imperfectly to become peace, so we can bring it to our next situation after this United in Strength session, to our next interaction. And my plan will be to become peace with you so that I can bring it to my family after the United in Strength session, to that chaotic group on the other side of this wall that might be screaming and hitting each other and throwing things all over the place. And maybe that peace that I'll be trying to cultivate, maybe it will last 1 minute, and that will be 1 minute more than 0. So that's good. Maybe it will be 10 minutes long, or perhaps it will be an hour long, and it will resonate more throughout the day. Any of those would be something. So let's go ahead and practice walking meditation. So I want to invite us to move into a posture perhaps of standing. to prepare ourselves to walk. And I'll walk within a little bit of space here where you'll be able to see me on camera most of the time. And so taking on a posture of strength, a posture of comfort as you stand here, not locking your joints like your knees or your elbows, but standing in a solid, comfortable way. And allowing yourself to feel your breath. Being present to your in-breath. So aware when you're breathing in. Present to your out-breath. Aware when you're breathing out. Reminding yourself that with each breath, it's an opportunity to create a little bit more peace in this moment for yourself. I want to invite us in a moment here to take our first step. And so to do that in the approach of mindful walking, the idea is to be aware of even the intention to move one of your feet. And then you'll be tuned in to the awareness of using some of your muscles to begin lifting up one of your legs and placing it down in front of you. Tuning in to the weight as it shifts from one foot to the next. So if you haven't already, you can take that first step slowly, mindfully, and carefully. Aware of how you transfer your weight to each foot. And don't forget about your breathing. Present to each full inhale and each full exhale. Each turn, each lifting of the foot can be done with mindfulness. And I'm going to return to my standing position. Attending to your experience right now in the present moment. Perhaps finding a bit more of that inner peace. Which you can return to and call forth throughout your day.